week again where we get to talk about the best show on television, AMC's The Walking Dead. Today we're talking about Season 5, Episode 10, called Them. What did you guys think of the episode? I thought it was great. I've heard a lot of comments that it was just another filler episode and people hate filler episodes. But you guys, if we didn't have filler episodes every once in a while, where we see how things are affecting our group, we would never fall in love with these characters. I hate seeing those comments where, oh, it was just another filler episode. We would not love these characters as much as we do if they didn't give us these filler episodes where we fall in love with them. And I loved this episode because, for one, we have three different people. You know, the whole group is kind of grieving and at a really low point, but we have these three characters that are all grieving in different ways, and I love that they show how guilt and grief affects different people here, because we have three entirely different characters. We have Maggie, who has generally been very strong, and we haven't really seen her feel any sort of strong grief over the loss of her family. I mean, she's lost everyone now, her entire family. She's always been so strong and we don't see her grieve. And so for her to now be at such a low point where she's not even sure she wants to go on anymore in this life, she's not even sure she wants to survive it. She's not sure she wants to try. To see her at that point, to see her lean against that tree after killing a walker and fall down and just cry was just heartbreaking, and you really feel her emotion and what she's going through. And she describes to Glenn the feeling of loss, how quickly she lost her father and her sister, and you know, it didn't quite affect her as much, you know, it didn't quite feel real. And then when to find out her sister's alive and then dead all in the same day, how it just really hit her, and she feels guilty and guilt-ridden over it. And so you see her grieving. We see Sasha, who's almost just the opposite. We know that she's feeling guilty and she's feeling so sad and so upset over the loss of her brother, but she's acting out and acting aggressive and angry, and she is potentially putting our other survivors at risk, you know, by acting in or taking part in risky behavior, you know, breaking ranks on the bridge and trying to kill the walkers, thus putting everyone else in danger because they're trying to protect her. She almost stabbed Michonne on the bridge by accident because she's just out of control. She did slice Abraham's arm, you know, after killing a walker. So she is endangering the rest of the survivors' lives in her anger over the death of her brother. And I just read a comment, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. You literally just posted on my YouTube just a couple hours ago, but the person said they love how Sasha's grief mirrors Tyrese's after he lost Karen, how they are so similar in how they react to their sadness. You know, we remember Tyrese was so angry, he just like attacked Rick over it. Remember how they were punching and, you know, fighting each other? And that's so much like Sasha. And I'm so happy, whoever you are, I'm so sorry I don't remember your name, but I'm so happy that you wrote that in the comments, because I didn't realize that until you said it. And now going back and thinking about it, there's been so many comments where Sasha says, we're not the same. I am not the same as my brother. And Michonne says, well, it is the same though. But looking back, you can see that they are so very similar. And I love the show. I love that they put these things in there that you have to kind of, oh yeah, remember how Tyrese was? And they really think it through, you know? I mean, the whole thing, we're not the same. And then you see them grieving in the same way. It's amazing. And then we have Daryl, who is also really guilt-ridden over Beth's death. He really wishes and thinks that he could have potentially helped her, you know, saved her. He feels guilty over letting her get kidnapped and just everything. And he is so sad because we know that they were developing whatever their relationship is. And you guys know I love Daryl, so it's I'm sure hard for you guys to think of me as unbiased, but taking a step back and taking a step away from the romance factor of how we want him to have romance, and looking at it from his point of view, where he is an adult male, but he has never really gotten that far emotionally with anyone. And so when he was with Beth in this funeral home, and he was opening up to her, and he was starting to feel something, and you can really see that she was having some sort of effect on him, whether it was, you know, feelings of romantic interest or just feelings in general, opening up these feelings of emotion in him that he has never felt before. Whatever it was, it affected him greatly. And then to have her ripped from him and to have a hope of getting her back, and then she's dead. So he not only feels guilty for letting her go, but he does feel an extreme sense of loss to someone that he was feeling very, very close to. And I've read a lot of comments on, oh, I hate how they're playing Daryl the exact same way as they did the last time when Herschel died and they left the prison. But you guys have to realize it hasn't been that long, and why wouldn't they play him the same? He's the same person. Sure, he's gone through a few different things since then, but people don't change that quickly. They don't change how they react to grief. The way he reacts to grief and sadness is the same way he's always dealt with it. He shuts down, he shuts the emotions down, and he doesn't feel them. And he prevents himself from feeling them, and he bottles it up inside, and he goes off on his own, and he pouts about it, you know, and he's sad about it, but he wants to be alone. And in this episode, you know, you see that he's starting to do that. He's starting to pull away. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to feel it. And that is them playing him the same way. I mean, why would they play him any different? It would not be the same character if they suddenly made him willing to talk about it and just crying all the time, you know, or getting really angry. It wouldn't be Daryl. It wouldn't be the Daryl that we know. And we see our characters slowly progressing and changing and adapting to this world. But it's a slow process, you know? Look how far Carol has come since season 1. It's been a long process of her changing and adapting to the environment and becoming the amazing woman that she is now. But she didn't do that overnight. Her husband didn't die and then she was automatically a strong fighter, a strong woman who stuck up for herself and shot children, set people on fire. I mean, it took her a very long time to get to that point. And so for Daryl to, he's not going to change that quickly. We know that. He's still learning how to deal with the grief that he feels from this world. So, but we do see in this episode, he has a moment with Carol in the woods, and all of us Daryl people out there were probably like squirming in our seats. I loved this moment, and even though it wasn't a romantic moment at all, I'm totally fine with that, because what we see is we see Carol follow Daryl off into the woods. She knows how upset he is. She knows that Beth meant something to him. She's probably the best person in the group at reading Daryl's feelings and emotions because she's very close to him, and it's kind of like having a best friend, I think, at this point, where you know what your best friend is feeling even if they haven't told you, because you can read their body language, and you can just, you know each other so well that you just know. And I think that is what Daryl and Carol have at this point, is they're like best friends, whether they know it or not. They can read each other and they know. Just like when Carol went off, you know, to leave from the church and she was going to drive away, Daryl knew. He saw her leave and he tracked her and he followed her and he stopped her from going, and tried to stop her from going, tried to convince her that they can all start over. Nobody else came after her. Nobody else noticed that she was gone except him. And that's the relationship that they have here. They know how each other is feeling. So for her, I wrote down the words that she said. She said, I know you, we're different. I can't let myself, but I know you have to let yourself feel it. And then she kisses him on the forehead and she kind of gives him a small hug. And it's those words where you have to let yourself feel it, because she knows him and she knows that he has to deal with it. So later on in the episode, we see him go off by himself. He's sitting outside of the barn and he's smoking a cigarette. He's burning himself with a cigarette, which, you know, is likened to self-harm. Knowing his background and the abuse that we know that he suffered during his childhood, it makes sense that that's how he deals with pain. It's kind of hard to explain it unless you've gone through it, but it makes sense for him to deal with pain and deal with suffering in that way. And I thought that was very realistic for them to put that in there, because it kind of shows how he deals with stuff, shows his past abuse, and which they've been delving into in the last season as well. you know, or in the beginning of season 5, excuse me, they've been dealing with his background and his backstory and the abuse that he suffered and that kind of thing, you know. So for him to smoke the cigarette, burn himself, then cry a little bit about it, that was a huge step for his character. So no, I don't think he's grieving in the same way. I don't think he's the exact same Daryl that just shuts down. To see him take Carol's advice, go off into the woods alone, and to grieve over Beth the only way that he knows how, that's a big step for him. And I think from that point on in the episode, we see him, you know, he starts talking. Up until that point, he didn't talk. He didn't say anything but like one word answers and grunts, you know. And then we see him open up and talk to Maggie, who's also suffering. He mentions Tyrese, and he mentions Beth and how strong she was, even though she didn't know it. And he gives Maggie the music box. So a big step for him emotionally. Moving on, because I've spent quite a long time talking about that. I wanted to touch base on Maggie and Gabriel, Father Gabriel, real fast, because Maggie says some very harsh words, harsh yet true words to Father Gabriel. And, you know, he's offering help and guidance to her if she ever wants to talk about the emotional loss, you know, she suffered from losing her father and her sister and everyone else in her family. And she calls him on it. She calls him on the fact that he's being a hypocrite, that he had the opportunity to save his people, his congregation, and he let them die outside the church. He hid, and he was a coward. And she calls him on it. And then later in the episode, we watch him burn his collar. I'm not Catholic, so I don't know what that's called, but you guys know what I'm saying. We see him burn it when they're eating the dogs, and that is a huge step for Gabriel. He's maintained his faith this entire time, and I think now that he's taken a step out into the world, and, you know, he's been isolated for the entire time until just recently, and now he's taking a step out into the world, and he's seeing what is really happening and the horrors that are really occurring. And I think he's starting to question his faith a little bit, and when he throws that down, he kind of just shakes his head and watches it burn. That is a huge changing point for him as well, and I'm very interested to see how he continues to change and how he's affected by the group and where his character goes from here. We have, I also didn't mention, but we have the scenes where the group is just really, they don't have any water, they don't have any food, they've been walking a really long time, it's hot outside, everything is dry, and they're running out of water very fast, and they're just at the lowest point that they've ever been. They're so weak, and they find water in the road left by a friend. And I was a little bit surprised that they weren't more suspicious over it, because, you know, they wouldn't drink it, and that's great. I mean, I feel like I probably would have drank it. Eugene wanted to drink it, but they left it there, and they didn't drink it, but it starts to rain. And seeing the joy on their faces, and Tara and Rosita laying down in the road in the rain, was just, I love it when they have happy moments like that. And they were so happy, and then we get the storm, and they take shelter in the barn. And Rick gives his "We Are the Walking Dead" speech, which was amazing, because obviously that's a line from the comics. It's a very famous line from the comics, and we see it all over the internet these days, and used in a lot of different ways in the Walking Dead world. So it was pretty amazing. Rick delivered that line so well. I mean, I love Andrew Lincoln, because he's just embodied Rick, you know. He's different than Rick from the comics, but he has just made this character, and his voice and the way he delivers the line was just so perfect. Like, excuse me, it gives you chills just hearing it. And his voice is amazing anyways, I'm sure you all know. So, but I was so thrilled that the line was in there. And we see them, the walkers are coming, and they're attacking the barn, trying to get in, and it's so intense, and then all of a sudden it just flashes, and it's Maggie laying on the ground asleep, and we don't know what happened to the walkers. And I was pretty surprised, because I really thought from the promos that particular barn scene where the walkers were attacking was going to immediately lead into the car scene where they're driving the car through the big herd of walkers, which now we know didn't happen and will likely happen in the next episode. So come to find out, a tree had just fallen at perfect timing, I guess, because of the storm, right on all of the walkers, and saved the group. I mean, the perfect coincidence. I forgot to mention the dogs, of course. I'm all over the place today. They were dogs, not wolves. I'm happy to say my prediction was correct on that. I was a tiny, I was pretty sure, but I was a tiny bit worried I was going to be saying to everyone, it's dogs, and then have it actually be wolves and me just look like an idiot. So I was happy to say that they were actually dogs. We only saw them for a brief second before Sasha killed them, but luckily the group had a ton of meat to eat, and now they are healthier, I guess, happier, full than they were before. So that was great. Kind of sad to see the little dog collars and know that the dogs have survived for this long on their own and just to be eaten. It's kind of sad. But yeah, I mean, the group was in danger and they took them down and they got a meal out of it. So that was great. Moving on to probably the best part of the episode was the introduction of Aaron. I'm going to say a comic spoiler real fast and then we won't talk about it again, so you might just want to flip ahead a few seconds. But we know Aaron from the comics, and hopefully they're going to play him the same way as the comics. But Aaron is a scout, I guess, for Alexandria, you could say. It's been a while since I've read it, but he's a good guy, and he eventually leads the group to Alexandria, which we know is a safe place. So, and spoilers there. But to see him come around the corner at such a weird time, you know, Maggie and Sasha had just had their conversation about whether or not they wanted to survive, and Maggie said they will survive, and that's the hard part about it, is they will. And the music box doesn't work, and so she sets the music box down, and then Aaron comes around the corner, and they're just like, what? You know, guns raised. And he uses Rick's name, which tells you that he's been spying on them for a while. And he's so perfectly dressed, and then the music box turns on, and it was so scary and creepy. Like, the music box was supposed to be so happy, and then, you know, it's supposed to be a happy moment for Sasha and Maggie, and then to have it not work, and it's sitting there, and he says Rick's name, and you know that he's been spying on them and watching them, and then the music box comes on, and it's super creepy. Like, it turns a happy moment into a terrifying moment. And so you're sitting there going, okay, is he good or is he bad? Every person we've met so far is bad, so we should probably just assume that he's bad. And we'll talk about, I'm going to do a Dead Ahead episode next, so we'll talk about my thoughts on the next episode. It probably will contain spoilers because we'll talk more about the comics. But yeah, that's it for my review on episode 10, Them. What did you guys think? What was your favorite part? And yeah, let me know in the comments below. I will see you guys next time.